With the upcoming release of Resident Evil 9, I'm planning on doing a large video during spooky season to celebrate the new title, but as I started working on it, I realized some of these topics are worth their own videos, such as looking at the original Resident Evil, specifically all of its ports. Newcomers to the series may want to start at the beginning, but might be confused by how many versions there are. Where do I start? Which is the definitive version to play? Well, I hope to clear some things up and maybe even answer those questions for you in this video. What originally started out as a remake of an NES game called Sweet Home, which in itself is based on a Japanese horror film by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, which has players trying to survive in a spooky location by means such as solving puzzles. Definitely a game worth its own video someday. Resident Evil, or Biohazard in Japan, turned into a juggernaut franchise for Capcom, essentially saving it from bankruptcy. From director Shinji Mikami, who made Goof Troop and Aladdin. Yeah. Well, it all started on March 22nd, 1996. Here is the original Biohazard. This is Resident Evil in its purest form. The original Japanese release. We'll use this as the major basis for the story of the original game.
Biohazard.
Oh yeah. Here we have two playable characters. I'm sure you're familiar with them. Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. As you can see, Chris is considered to be hard mode and Jill is considered easy. These characters do have differences. Chris is a tank. He can take a beating having more health, but has less storage. Jill, on the other hand, has more storage, a lockpick, and more weapons that we'll detail on her run. Basically, she's OP compared to Chris. We'll start with Chris though. The game opens with an iconic live-action cutscene. It's always rumored that the original Japanese had the uncensored in color version, but it's actually still in black and white. However, this is the full uncensored version, with all the gory effects intact, and Chris smoking, which apparently was too much for the US censors. The real highlight here is the intro, with the theme song,
I got a shotgun. Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine.
Now we move on to the voice acting.
Whoa! What is it?
What? Oh no!
There is serum. Oh no, I should have brought some with me.
No problem.
Yeah, so much for him. We got to the root of the problem.
What is it? It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things.
You saved me.
Yeah.
That was close. Thanks, Barry.
Don't mention it. What a monster. I can't believe... What the hell is this place anyway?
It is iconic, plain and simple. And I love everything about how corny it is because that's part of the appeal. Resident Evil has always been about honoring and satirizing the horror genre, from directors who themselves are not very big horror fans. While I never found these games to be particularly scary, I always loved them for the horror aesthetic. Masterful set designs with pre-rendered backgrounds that help the game age quite nicely actually. The fixed camera angles, which are a complaint for some, have always felt more cinematic to me, and it helps with the anxiety of not knowing what's around every corner and every room. And the sound design is just mwah. The tank controls are often a hot topic of debate. Newer players don't seem to enjoy it as much, and it's often looked at as being inferior even by some game developers, like with the case of Silent Hill 2. Of course, this was made because of technical limitations, but they still work. Obviously, the controls become more refined as the games go along, but to me, the tank controls in Resident Evil are some of the best. Here's the first zombie, another iconic moment that scared all the little ones in the 90s playing this, and in the Japanese version, this cutscene is extended, also uncensored with extra gore. Now that the danger is introduced, we are separated from the others alone in this mansion with a knife and a gun. The knife can actually be a very OP weapon if you know how to distance yourself from enemies, but this game gives you enough ammo that you don't have to worry about it. The door animations are loading screens, very, very creative and innovative way to keep that extra tension, build some anxiety in the player while we're really just trying to load into the next room. The first save room, which is a staple in the series, we meet Rebecca, survivor of Bravo. And this is where we get our first decision to make that can determine one of many possible endings that I'll cover. There are many different routes that you can take in these games, especially Jill. Jill has a lot of routing that can determine your ending. Make note of the music now because, oh boy, will that become a doozy later on. Now it's time to fully explore the mansion and solve its puzzles. The game does seem to like to poke fun at Chris, after all he can't read, can't play piano.
It's me, Chris.
Is that you, Rebecca?
Who the hell else did you think that was? That's standing right in front of you. Getting jump scared by dogs, not going back into that hallway, putting our hand in a tub of green goo. Ugh. Resident Evil is not a game that holds your hand, meaning your first playthrough can be a little frustrating. You're gonna go around picking up items, and it can't be cryptic what to do with them until it becomes obvious. But with your limited inventory and resources, it can get a little stressful. But once you realize that when you kill enemies and clear a hallway, well, then you're safe. Those enemies are dead and you're free to travel. Picking up files is another important aspect of the game. Reading files is how you learn more about the lore of the game, and sure, you've got cutscenes to give you the big reveals, but the name Umbrella doesn't really mean anything unless you've been trying to do all your Scooby-Doo work here. Reading diaries to learn from the scientists about the strange experiments on humans and animals, the T-virus, the name Spencer, and the mysterious construction of this mansion, and you can't forget Itchy Tasty. Our first giant boss here is a large snake named Yawn. Now you can bypass this easy by doing this trick. But I'll take the bite to show you this Rebecca section. If Chris is bitten by Yawn, then he is poisoned. The game will actually let us play as Rebecca to go find the serum and save him. Not much ammo, but damn, she can sprint. After solving those last few puzzles, we now have all the crests that we need to go outside. The outdoor section is by far the creepiest aspect of the game. Dogs lurking in every corner, falling snakes, and the general ambience. Playing it the first time, you never know what might just jump out of the bushes at you. The guardhouse section is perhaps the most linear of the game. Only a couple of rooms and a couple of keys. Do get ready for some pushing puzzles though. Lots and lots and lots and lots of pushing in this game. And that's my least favorite aspect of these games, to be completely honest with you. It's fascinating how much of the original Resi is just a lot of giant critters. Giant spiders, giant snakes, giant sharks, giant hornets, giant plants. Yeah, Plant 42 is the boss of the guardhouse. Whoa, hey now, you put Chris down. Rebecca, that's just not something within his control. Oh yeah, Wesker's in this game. Remember when Chris was looking for Barry? I don't think Chris does. Now that we've got the last key, time to explore the mansion for the last time, getting the things we couldn't get before. And we'll have our first encounter with a hunter. These things are diabolical. They can kill you very easily. They're fast, they're mean, and they have a decapitation move that will just ruin your run. Far the most threatening enemy in the game. Now the mansion's enemies have completely shifted to have more hunters here instead of normal zombies. Well, we kill Yawn and gather the first MO disc. You need to collect all 3 of these for the best ending. We also unlock the Magnum, which will make the rest of the game a walk in the park. We make our way to the caverns underneath. There, the captain of Bravo team, Enrico, is killed by a traitor.
Hell? Umbrella.
Beautiful final words. The underground is pretty linear too. There's a few hunters to worry about and a giant spider, Black Tiger. Now you can kill the spider, or you can use it to open the door for you with this strat. And there's Chris's first encounter with his arch nemesis, the Boulder. The lab is the final section of the game. There's zombies and naked zombies. While here we find some files and puzzles to use an Umbrella computer to open some locked doors. The login is John and the password is Ada. I bet that sounds familiar to you. Welcome to Chris's typing lessons. Poor guy is struggling. Well, it's the 90s, you know. We also find the slideshow revealing all of Umbrella's experiments and revealing the traitor. The picture is awesome. When we get to the final boss, the power this elevator by going into this room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like this.
Rebecca!
Tyrant! Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
And there's Tyrant. And there Tyrant goes. Rebecca sets off the self-destruct, but we can't leave just yet. We gotta use these ammo discs. Using all of them, we can save Jill. But where's Barry?
Look at those monsters!
I hope she got paid extra for that. The timer counting down till some explosion. But don't fret about it too much, as we can call Brad for the escape and... Oh no, it's Tyrant again. This time, much more threatening. Brad makes himself useful and throws a rocket for us to use. And with that, Jill, Chris, and Rebecca survive. But,
Where's Barry?
the game doesn't end with the traditional grading system like the later ones do, although you are rewarded with a couple factors. If you beat the game in under 3 hours, you unlock a special weapon, an infinite ammo rocket launcher. And by beating the game with the best ending, you unlock a special key that gives you access to costumes. Now in Jill's campaign, Chris is missing, and Barry is here to help and actually hangs around for a good bit of the story. Barry is the best part of the game. Jill is also very popular for speedrunning because of her lockpick giving you access to more doors early on.
It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
For her larger inventory and her weapons catalog. Some situations are different, like the shotgun puzzle. If you do this early on without the solution, Barry will save you from being squished in the infamous...
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
God, I love Barry. It feels like some of these lines were meant for different scenes.
No, but something's wrong with this house.
Whoa! This hall is dangerous.
With Jill, we also get the Grenado gun, which basically makes us unstoppable. With different ammo types, this weapon can effectively make easy work of bosses and standard enemies alike. When playing Jill, you'll also notice there are less enemies in areas as well, making it easier to navigate around them. Jill herself is just a much more useful character. She's got more storage, more weapons, less enemies, lockpicking, Barry. She can play piano. Chris can't even friggin' read. On our way to Jan's room, we'll find Richard, who isn't quite dead yet. We have to go and find him serum like Rebecca's section in the Chris run, just for him to live a few seconds longer, I guess. The rest of Jill's section plays out the same, up to the plant where you can clear quite easy. This time, Barry will make the V-jolt. Just kidding, he has a flamethrower. I wish Rebecca did that too. One of my favorite Barry moments in the entire game is when Jill kills the giant-ass snake who is melting on the ground there, and Barry just walks in, stating,
Have you found anything interesting?
"That's awesome." The rest of the game does play the same up until the underground section where we team up with Barry again. Barry sticks around here while we go to the lab, doing pretty much everything else the same but with less enemies. Oh, and Barry's family is being held hostage, so he has to do Wesker's bidding. But he's fucking Barry Burton and attacks Wesker. This music is freaking supreme, dude.
Barry,
Sorry, Jill.
how is your family?
I was listening to what you and Wesker were talking about. Do you think we could see Tyrant now?
Why?
That must be the computer for monitoring this creature. Damn you!
Why would you do this? Barry survives this.
I'm really embarrassed.
It's actually interesting that Wesker doesn't die here like the Chris run, except... How many of you knew about that one? We'll use the ammo disc here to save Chris and get to the landing pad. Now for the final boss.
It's coming! Jill! Kill that monster! You're our Amazon, Jill!
You're an Amazon, Jill, yeah. And that's the original Biohazard. What's really bizarre about the original Resident Evil is that there is not a canon ending. To be fair, they weren't really thinking about sequels when making this game, but there is no canon ending where all 4 of the main characters survive. Ultimately, who you play as will survive in every ending. Jill, for example, has 4 main endings ranging from best to bad. Best is the closest to the canon, with Jill, Chris, and Barry all surviving. Or you can have an ending where Jill and Barry survive, meaning you leave poor Chris locked up to be blown away.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about that. I know he must still be alive.
Or one where Jill and Chris survive, meaning you gotta let Barry die.
I'm really embarrassed.
Barry dying, by the way, means that the mansion doesn't explode, so the tyrant is unleashed outside. And of course, the bad ending is where Jill is the sole survivor and everyone else dies, also allowing the tyrant to be released in the wild. The endings for Chris are immensely similar, basically endings where you survive with just Rebecca, or just Jill, or just Chris by himself. And if Rebecca does die,
Rebecca!
that's messed up, then the mansion doesn't explode. It's actually really wild to have so many endings available in the game, and not a single one of them is canon. Now for the first version to use the title Resident Evil. There are some notable differences. The first obvious one is the title, Resident Evil. I've heard several different stories about how the name was chosen, and most famously it was pulled from a hat. What is factual is that the name Biohazard had to be changed because they could not trademark it in the West. And so the name Resident Evil was given to the game that is based on, well, evil in a residence. This version has some censorship in its cutscenes. As you can see from the side-by-side comparisons, the US version is a bit shorter and doesn't have as much gore. The opening and ending themes are also changed to now instrumentals.
Chris Redfield, Barry Burton.
Oh, and they can't let Chris smoke, so they do this. They just put an extra clip of Chris over his face. Oh, jeez. Okay. From the beginning, the difficulty associated with each character has been removed. Speaking of difficulty, the original US version has been adjusted. This seemed to be common with Western ports for early Resi. The same thing happened with 2. I guess they thought the games were too easy in Japan, so they made them a little harder for players in the West. Enemies are easier to kill for the most part in the original Japanese. They take a few more hits in the Western release, and there is no auto-aim either anymore. There's also less ink ribbon pickups, meaning less saves. I forgot to mention that earlier, that there are limited saves in this game, dependent on how many ink ribbons you find in the mansion. So with the increased difficulty, you could still play the same routing you would the Japanese version, even if the enemies take a few more hits. They're still pretty easy to juggle around, but once you get to the second half of the game, returning to the mansion, that's when you'll find the hunters to be a true menace, taking double the amount of ammo. Hell, some even take more than that. So in this version, you really want to work on running around those enemies, as there just isn't a surplus of ammo for that. You gotta really know which fights to pick. This is the version many would consider hard mode, and there are a lot who prefer this one for its increase in difficulty, seeing this one as the true survival horror experience. It's really weird that there isn't an option for an easier difficulty, as I can see this being a very frustrating experience for newcomers. I mean, hell, this is how a good chunk of the world experienced the game for the first time, on its hardest version. So while on the surface the games may not look very different, they definitely feel different when playing. Next is the Windows PC release. Now what's really cool is that the PC version is still available today thanks to the folks at GOG Games. So what makes the PC version different? Quite a bit. The opening is in color, and fully uncensored for the first time in the West. The graphics are a bit better, and perhaps the most exciting, you can skip the door animations. Now playing this on modern PC works great thanks to GOG, but what's even better is that you can make the game look a lot crisper. Thanks to the Rebirth patch, which has existed for years, originally meant for the Japanese PC release, this is the version I use mostly for streaming or speedruns, and my personal preference for the game. You can even add on this HD mod called Seamless HD, where we can enhance our experience greatly. And don't worry, this is just for personal preference, the original isn't going anywhere. Personally, don't use Seamless HD that much. I think that the standard classic Rebirth with texture filtering looks really good already. Seamless makes a lot of elements look great, but it also kind of gives it that plasticky look. The cutscenes, on the other hand, are absolutely glorious. In terms of gameplay, it's the same, although you can adjust your controls however you want now. But there are some in-game additions here as well, such as 2 exclusive weapons, one for Jill here, and one for Chris. They both also have additional costumes available. Oh, the 90s. Outside of that, and the uncensored and color cutscenes and the door skips, it's basically the same game as the Japanese release, just better. The next release is for the Sega Saturn. The story modes here are almost identical to the PS1 version, and the Western release does have the Western difficulty of the original PS1 game and censorship. That isn't to say that this version isn't unique, however. One major difference is that the 3D models have been reworked for the hardware, meaning all the characters look quite different from the PS1 or PC versions. I'm not gonna say they look better or worse because that's subjective. At times, they look really great, and at other times, nightmare. But truthfully, you could say that for every version of the game. They definitely stand out more with the pre-rendered backgrounds, and they sure made Chris more of a brick here. The sound also seems to be more crisp, but my version I'm playing here must have been scratched because it tends to glitch a bit.
Okay, Jill and I will stay in the hall in case of an emergency.
Chris?
There's also a new enemy type, the Ticks. Ugh. They function identically to the Hunters, basically. Actually, that's exactly what they are. They are reskinned Hunters in the underground. I like the variety, even if it's just surface value. It makes the underground seem creepier knowing it has its own giant tick creatures there. They definitely used an alternate audio take here post-plant fight.
What a monster! I can't believe... What the hell is this place anyway? What a monster. I can't believe... What the hell is this place anyway?
Again, the story modes aren't very different, except for Chris has something new. A second tyrant boss in the lab, meaning that on the best ending, you have to fight 3 tyrants. Perhaps the biggest addition here is the new battle mode. This is a sort of gauntlet where you can choose from a set list of weapons and go into different rooms or stages to battle enemies. What's really cool here is that you battle a zombie Wesker and a golden tyrant. This is the addition that I think makes the Saturn version alone worth checking out. The Sega Saturn also includes its own unique costumes. There's a strong argument amongst fans on what's superior, the PS1 or the Saturn. If we're talking strictly the original PS1, then yeah, I'd probably go in favor of the Saturn as well, except for its controller. But the next version is another story. Resident Evil Director's Cut. The highly anticipated sequel Resident Evil 2 hit some major development hurdles, so as an apology, Capcom re-released Resident Evil for the Saturn and in a new complete package for PlayStation 1. Now this is the version that's available on PS4/PS5. I should express that, because in the US, we got the DualShock version, which I'll explain in a bit, on the PS3, whereas everyone else in the world got the original director's cut. Again, I'll explain that more in detail when we get to the DualShock version, but just be aware that this version is the one that you'll be playing on the PS4 or PS5. Included here is the original game, and by that I mean in its Japanese form. The original Japanese difficulty unaltered, now in English translation, with the original enemy damage rates and item pickups, as well as a difficulty selection including an easy mode which doubles your ammo and enemies have less health. The US version was supposed to be the uncensored version alongside the more gory bits of the gameplay and the uncensored FMVs, but they in fact did release it with the censored cutscenes because of some copyright issues, and some people working on the game wanted to save time by just releasing the game with the censored cutscenes, even though it was still marketed as uncensored. Some European versions did get lucky with the uncensored intro, but not the Kenneth zombie scene. Capcom did make the uncensored intro free for download on their website back in the days as an apology. The biggest change here is the Arrange mode or Advanced mode. Arrange mode is a complete reworking of the original story with items now in different locations, different enemy placements and maneuvering, and lots of little things sprinkled over the game, such as Forrest awakening as a zombie when investigating his corpse. Many camera angles have also been adjusted, and some of them even better. And there's new costumes for Jill, Chris, and Rebecca. I do like Arrange mode for also utilizing some of the rooms that didn't really have much purpose in the original, such as this outside area where we get the chemical, which is also where we find it in the 2002 remake. As you can see here, I'm using a handgun exclusive to Arrange mode. Pretty powerful beast that has a chance of decapping enemies. The camera angles in the hallway definitely feel a lot more like Remake as well. While each character does have a unique costume in Arrange mode, There's no special key unlocks for getting the best ending. This is a fantastic addition that makes this version feel like a competitor for being the definitive release. There was one more major release for Resident Evil, although it came out after Re 2. This is the DualShock version. Oh boy. This release was meant to accommodate the fancy new DualShock controllers now featuring analog and rumble features. Because that's what tank-controlled games need, an analog stick. For the US, this was also the greatest hits or green label version of the game. The Japanese release included a bonus features disc with lots of extra goodies, including footage of the cancelled prototype of Re 2, now dubbed 1.5. We didn't get any of that in the States. And hell, Europe didn't even get this version. Oh, and how could I forget the big thing? They completely rescored the game. Offered a new soundtrack for the game. Except, not really, because not only did Mamoru lie about being deaf, he also lied about writing this score. The new score is enough to make this version the one you want to avoid, unless you want some laughs. In all fairness, there are some good tracks in here. I like the new Rebecca theme. But then you have the famous, the infamous basement music. I think I've made my points. As aforementioned, on PS3 in the US, this is the version that was available on the digital store, or if you got the anthology release of 6. The picture of the cover art is the good director's cut, but sure enough, when you boot the game up, it's the DualShock version. And this was only for the US, but when they re-released the game on PS4 and PS5, they fixed this to being the good director's cut. Thank God. Now technically, Remake is the next big thing to talk about, but I actually want to move on to the handhelds to close off the original game. You see, the idea of making a portable port for Resident Evil had been in the works since Game Boy Color, and it was damn near identical port outside of, it was on Game Boy Color. But Capcom pulled the plug on this version because they felt it was too limited by the hardware. You can actually play a prototype if you want. All things considered, it's pretty impressive what they were able to achieve. The idea of playing Resi on the go must have been exciting, and eventually fans would get this Game Boy Color game. This brings us to Resident Evil Deadly Silence. This is a port of the original Resident Evil on DS. Interesting, right? Well, they finally did it outside of the PSP and PS Vita. You can play Resi on the go. Released in 2006 to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the game and series. It's not just a port, but there are significant additions here that not only make it worth talking about, but many consider this to be the definitive version of the game. There's 2 play modes, Rebirth and Classic. Classic, as you would expect, is the unaltered original version of the game. Some nice changes here are subtitles to the opening FMVs, even if the quality is, well, this is original DS, and still the censored intro cutscenes as well. However, the Kenneth Zombie, interestingly, is uncensored. Another great feature is that you can skip the in-game cutscenes. Thank God. You can also skip the door animations. As you can see here, the top screen serves as a map, whereas everything important happens on the touchscreen or bottom screen. The characters have been completely remodeled with new animations. The item screen has also been reworked to accompany the DS touchscreen. And you'll notice, where's the knife? Well, now the knife is just an attack that no longer requires equipping. Ain't that neat? Did I mention there's also Quick Turn now? Wee. Yeah, this port is incredible. It looks great for the hardware, it plays great, and those gameplay changes really make this title we played several times now feel new and refreshing. Speaking of new and refreshing, Rebirth mode is the big thing here. Ah, sorry, I forgot to turn off green blood. Now, Rebirth mode feels normal until... what the hell? We got Michael Myers Simulator over here. Yeah, Rebirth makes some wild changes to play around with the touchscreen. It's a whole new experience. Apparently you can poke Jill too. Sorry. The handgun also has an increased chance of headshots, and some enemy placements seem to have borrowed from arrange mode. You've got these treasure chest mini games where you can actually play out being the master of unlocking. They've added extra puzzles here to use the touchscreen, and it feels somewhat reminiscent of Remake. You've got a CPR minigame for Richard where you have to use the microphone. Ooh, don't blow too hard. Sorry, Richard. It seems like they just keep coming up with new ways to kill Richard in these games. The enemy AI seems a bit reworked too, such as Yawn. The enemy always had a 100% predictable pathing here, but damn, he chomped me up good. They even made lowering the water into a mini game. Something as simple as pushing a button in the original turns into a whole mini game. This phonograph puzzle was a pain in the ass. They even added another Yawn boss with the swiping minigame. But weird, since Yawn disintegrated. Nah, maybe it's another giant snake. Rebirth mode is awesome, but I will admit that the touchscreen gimmicks get a bit tedious and repetitive. I think this is a great way to reinvent the game for those like me who know it like the back of our hands, to have a fresh experience. But this is not one I could see myself revisiting very often. But you do get the whole original game available to you with the changes, so that's pretty awesome. This title also has its own unique costumes. Chris as a ninja, inspired by rejected costume ideas from the original, and Jill, god damn. There's also this multiplayer mode where you can go against players or co-op with several different playable characters. If you haven't already, check this one out. It's a damn shame 2 and 3 did not get this treatment. Well, that's all that there is for the original game, but I couldn't end this video without at least talking about the big one. Resident Evil Remake. Obviously, this is a topic worth its own video and something I'll talk more in depth with the bigger project. Hell, I could talk about this game for hours on its own, but there still seems to be confusion on this versus the original, and that there are people who still don't know the difference between remaster or remake, or that the remake has a remaster. If you're getting into Resident Evil, this is a convenient starting point as this still gets modern support, but the original release of this was simply a GameCube exclusive. And the director of Resident Evil 1, Shinji Mikami, had felt that the game didn't age well compared to the others, and wanted to create the true vision of the title in this new era of advanced 3D graphics and gameplay, only to find out that limitations still set him to pre-rendered backgrounds. All things considered, this is one of the greatest video games ever made. The story and settings follow closely to the original, but fans immediately will notice differences. Even an expert of the original game will be surprised how much they had to rewire their strats for this title. The mansion has expanded with more rooms, different puzzles, and different enemies. You can start with Jill or Chris like the original, and they function pretty much the same, but now Chris has a lighter, and Jill's lockpick has different uses. The graphics are outstanding, whether you're playing this on the GameCube on a CRT or on Dolphin emulator. This is one of the most beautiful games of the time, and 2002 was a great year for gaming. But the HD remaster does have upscaled graphics, a new modern control scheme that actually makes the analog stick have value, proper 16:9 aspect ratio, an easier mode for starting off with, and additional costumes based off of Resident Evil 5. There was also a Wii re-release for the GameCube version it's okay. It didn't change anything except put both discs onto a single one. It didn't do much for the controls, although it did support the Wii Remote, but it didn't even have a proper widescreen either. The game does utilize real face models for the in-game characters. For instance, Jill is based off of Julia Voth, this still being one of her most iconic and longest lasting looks for the series. The dialogue has also been improved. It's still corny, but at least it's coherent and pretty much makes sense.
Hey, hold on a sec. Look what I've found.
What?
A can of fizz. It's sure to yellow and mellow those things.
The live-action opening has been replaced with a 3D animated one, giving us less limitations, interweaving news reports, further connecting to Raccoon City, POV camera shots, and overall more atmospheric and spooky opening. It's kind of like how you imagine when reading the book and not thinking about,
No! Don't go!
it's as if to tell the fans of the original to get ready, we're doing something a little more serious this time. The scenery looks familiar, but in a much grander coat of paint. But don't worry, there's a lot more to this mansion. Now there's more exterior spaces that were originally planned but cut from the PS1 game. Additional wings of exploration, and the game plays funny enough with your expectations, such as waiting for the dogs to pop out. Not yet. The Jill sandwich still kinda happens.
That was a close one. A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
The enemy AI is much more of a threat. Shotguns, for example, no longer guarantee decaps, and dodging them takes a lot more finesse. Then there's Crimson Heads. Yeah, if you thought zombies were too easy, get ready for these assholes. Zombies times 2. They got sharp claws, fast feet, and a nasty attitude. You can prevent Crimson Heads from spawning by burning corpses or getting decaps if you're lucky. It's actually pretty morbid how many different ways you can let Richard die in this title, but he most certainly will. Whether you fail at bringing him serum, or he gets eaten by Jan, or the giant shark Neptune. But instead of going straight to the guardhouse, we get a little sidetracked and meet up with perhaps the best addition that the remake brought to the table. Some expanded lore with George Trevor, the man behind the mansion. We learn how Umbrella abused him and his family, most tragically his daughter, Lisa Trevor, who we run into. Experimented on, deformed, wearing her mother's face as a hood, Lisa is one of the most heartbreaking victims in the series, and a threatening boss. You can stun her, but you can't really kill her. The guardhouse is layered pretty similarly, but with item placements changed around that'll have you running a different route. What they really changed was the underground water lab here. Got lots of sharks that are a lot more threatening. And the Big Mama Neptune. There's a whole new puzzle to drain the water, and you have to take out Neptune in a pretty sadistic manner. Mansion 2 fills up with hunters, but funny enough, they're more predictable and easier to dodge. Underground is pretty similar, Crank Puzzle, Black Tiger, all that. But then we go even deeper. Barry gives us a ride down and
Barry!
That's so funny. Now with both of these pieces, we can make our way to the lab, but not before our boss with Lisa. This is interesting, you can shoot her down, but you can also push these pillars to reveal her mother's corpse. This is also where you can decide Barry's fate. The final lab also sports some different puzzles, most noticeably is this fuel canister, which if you run too fast, you'll blow up. You battle Tyrant to save the other characters, fight Tyrant again, except this time with a partner to help you, and boom. The game does have several different endings like the original, and basically they're all the same. Sole survivor, or survive with just one partner, or survive with all of them, but what's really odd is that they still do not have a canonical ending. And I know it's a remake and they wanted to stay true to the original game, but would it really have hurt them to, I don't know, put Rebecca in the prison cell with Chris, too? Or something simple like that? Maybe when they inevitably remake this game again, they'll fix that. Once you beat the game, there are several unlockables. Beating the game in under 3 hours and 5 hours gives you special unlimited ammo weapons. There's different play modes from Real Survivor based off of a scrapped idea from the US port of the original where your item boxes are not linked. So you drop off something at a certain item box and it stays in that specific box. It does not go to the others. After enough games, you'll unlock the Forest Zombie, which I kinda despise. Now Forrest will run around the mansion covered in explosives. So you cannot shoot him or he'll go boom, and so will you. There's invisible mode where all the enemies are invisible. And of course there's loads of unlockable costumes like Jill in her Wreath 3 outfit or Rebecca as a cowgirl. Not only is Remake a different game, it's a whole new experience, but it is a great first experience and introduction to the series. You don't lose anything from the original, and you actually gain more from this. It stands the test of time, not only as one of the best Resident Evil games, but as one of the best horror games ever made. I know that doesn't seem like enough time to talk about Remake. It will get its time again when we get to the bigger Resident Evil video later on. We will be looking at all of the games during spooky season in the franchise, But I wanted to throw this out as an introduction to that, as well as to help newcomers out in the franchise. So what are my recommendations? Ultimately, for the original PC, I think it's the most convenient and accessible, and its mod abilities give it so much more possibilities than what's available vanilla. For console, I'm sticking with Director's Cut. With its play modes and difficulty adjustments, I think it's the definitive way to experience the original on console. Although the Sega Saturn is definitely worth checking out, I highly recommend it, but I would probably suggest Director's Cut first. And the DS version absolutely blew me away, but it's still a DS version, and I'm not going to personally label that as the most optimal way to enjoy the game, but of course, there's Remake, which you can literally play on every major console and PC today. I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already. Which of these versions is your favorite? And which was the first that you played? If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and help me fight that algorithm. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button to keep up with the channel, as well as following my socials. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I got a shotgun.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine.